The Trident, a weapon of gods. The trident signified domination across Roman, Greek, and Hindu mythologies. Shiva warded off malevolent beings with his trident, also known as the Trishula, which was meant to represent his significance as a destroyer. That's what Triumph decided to name their new middleweight offering. And mind you, the middleweight class is pretty much the most competitive and saturated bike segment across the globe. Are Triumph trying to say that this is the weapon that will destroy the competition, or that is the weapon that will make you feel like a god?
Up until now, the entry point for the Triumph lineup was bikes like the Street Twin and the Triumph Bonneville. But this comes in almost a lakh cheaper, and it is part of those retro revivals that is trending nowadays. It gets a nice circular looking headlamp up front. You get a rounded off fuel tank and relatively slim forks up front. This gives it that lean body structure that we love to appreciate, and it looks more of something like a sporty roadster from the 90s. This is the perfect upgrade if you're coming from a bike like the Duke 390, Duke 250, because it still feels compact and nice and sporty, but it still has that big bike feel. That's why the Triumph Trident, in my opinion, is a very good upgrade from a bike like the Duke 390 or the Yamaha R3. To have a clear distinction from its bug-eyed siblings, the Street Triple family, Triumph have incorporated a new design style with the new Trident. The front end has a new headlamp with that circular LED headlight up front, which is split in the middle. The lamps work pretty decent in street use, but when it comes to highways, it's kind of alright. At the back end, that's where the Triumph is the most sophisticated, and it gets that Daytona Street Triple-esque back end, but it's a little bit more sophisticated because of the Triumph logo embossed inside the tail light.
For average 5'8"ers like me, it doesn't feel bulky and overwhelming, and will even welcome shorter riders. Its 805mm seat height is easier than it seems because of the narrow profile for the saddle, while a fat cushioning and a wider rear ensure that the comfort over long distances isn't compromised for the rider or even the pillion. The handlebars are wider than the Street Triple to offer better leverage in the city environments, but an early steering lock limits the flexibility for navigating or turning in tight spaces. The handlebars are curved towards the rider, which along with the raised foot pegs makes for a relaxed yet sporty riding posture. The tank features narrow recesses with plastic inlays, which look unique and provide good traction for the knees under braking or while doing sport riding. Overall, the Trident 660 is a very handsome looking bike, but the Trident 660 has another thing to fulfill. It's a Triumph, so it has to ride like one. So how does that fare? The chassis is suspended by a 41mm upside-down fork up front and a preload adjustable monoshock at the rear. While these suspension systems from Showa can be considered kind of bottom shelf parts, they do their job rather well. The front and rear have a harmonious damped feeling to them, which makes for a supple ride over most kind of undulations that a rose throw at it. That said, the soft setup tends to dive under braking or squat under hard acceleration. Brake late into a speed hump or pothole and the Trident's front end bottoms out, and you are even likely to scrape the underbelly on the taller bumps. In fact, the ground clearance will always be a matter or worry if you don't adjust the preload. Weirdly, the braking hardware comes from the cheap crate too, featuring sliding type Nissan calipers at the front and the rear. They worked fine even on a cold start, and for street use and a day-long worth of sport riding in the highway, we didn't encounter any sort of fade or spongy feel to complain about. Should you take this motorcycle to the track though? These brakes are likely to feel inadequate after a few hot laps. The engine is a 660cc triple that has essentially been derived from the 675cc unit that the Daytona used to come packing, with a shorter stroke though. There have been significant changes to the engine, with 67 new components used, and on the go, the engine feels significantly different. 80.4 bhp and 64 Nm of torque may sound low on paper, especially with the new Street Triple R putting close to 120 bhp, but on the move, you don't really find yourself wanting more. The engine has a solid punch and moves the 189 kg motorcycle along quite swiftly. Triumph claims that 90% of the torque is available everywhere in the rev range, and that is something that I can totally believe. Crack open the throttle at any RPM, at any speed, and the thing just takes off. The engine actually is very versatile. It's tractable. It will pot around in a higher gear without complaining, but when you want to wring it out, it will comply. The real meat of the engine is in the mid-range though. It doesn't have the same screaming top end as the Street Triple, but that also makes it far more usable and friendly on the road. Ride the 600s of the past and you will know how they can get intimidating at times, either with their size or with their abrupt power delivery. But the Trident doesn't feel like any of that. Despite the short gearing, the power delivery is smooth and linear, and the fueling feels spot on. There is a good amount of electronics also on the bike, so that you don't have to worry about the bike slipping or having a loss of traction. The Trident gets a cool little digital instrument cluster up front, which is in a circular shape. It has the rev meter going all around it, and in the middle you get your speedometer and other information data. It has buttons on the left hand side of the handlebar so that you can flick through the menus and choose your riding modes. Around the bends, it's not as sharp as the Super Sport or the Street Triple, or even the 390 Duke for that matter. That said, the turn-in is much more gradual and lazy, and once you get a hang of it, you won't have to hang too much off the bike to arc a clean curve through the bends.
The Trident 660 goes against the likes of the Kawasaki Z650 and Honda CB650. Yes, it is a considerable margin more expensive than both of those bikes, but the Trident is a bike that will make you actually feel like a god. It might not be the weapon that will destroy the competition, but it sure does make you feel special. It is much more exotic than the Z650, CB650, or even the Duke 790 in that case. And the electronics are brilliant, the chassis is brilliant, and it's a much more precise machine than all of the Japanese competitors and that weird Austrian competitor that it has. And well, the Trident 660 in my opinion is one of those bikes that even if you don't have the budget, stretch it little bit and you'll get a bike that will actually make you feel like a true god.
McRae on the inside is going to take it.
And Senna sprints away. Senna is